All right, so we're back here. I'm on page 15. What the author does first is he says, let's make a list of all the things we want the game to do. This isn't that different from the way you actually should create a program. Quite often, if I'm creating a brand new program, so let's say, for example, I don't know, like I said, um, I took this online Swift class, and what the guy said was, okay, we're going to write a program. And basically, set up any kind of interface you want. But the idea is you should be able to enter a number. And you can give it upper or lower boundaries if you want. And you click a button. And then when you click the button, the idea is what you're doing is you're putting in an age. That's what the number is. All right? And when you click a button, it'll tell you that age in dog years. If you've never heard that, the estimation is that for every year a human is, a dog year is like 7 human years. So my dog died over the summer, she was 10. So she was 70. So you could say she had a long life type of an idea. All right, but they said, the guy even said in there, he said, I can't make you do this because you're taking this class online. But the first thing I'd like you to do is to sit down and write up a list of things you think the program should do. And write up a list of things that you'd want the program to have, type of an idea. All right? So basically I set up the interface, decided, put some kind of a heading on the top that says, like age, or dog age in human years. I don't remember, it was a while ago. So dog age in human years. All right? Then I decided what I wanted to do is I wanted to get used to working with images. So I just went out to Google Images and found an image of a dog. All right? And put the image in here. Just so I got some practice playing with images. All right? Then I came in here and said this. I said, dog age. So that was a label. And that became a UI text field. And then I said, human, like equivalent or something like that. And then that came out here. Okay? And then the idea was, there was a button down here, so you put that in there and you click the button, determine age. And then there was another button here that said clear. Does all that make sense? All right, it's pretty simple, but that's what he's doing here. So he says, let's think about, what the game is supposed to do. He says, I'll give you an example. The app needs to put a hit me button on the screen and show an alert pop up when the user presses it. So he's being even more literal than I am. So he goes through all of the different stuff that's in here. And then he says, whenever I start working on a new app, the first thing I do is I start to put down a list of what I think the app should include. All right? And the only reason I'm taking a second here to go over this with you is human nature says that when it's like, you're given an assignment. So what's the first thing you're going to do? You're going to sit down, you're going to start creating the interface. I'm just telling you, that's probably what 90% of people do. That's definitely the wrong thing to do. Because what happens is as they say, in your mind's eye, you get a picture of what you think the finished product will look like. So you feel like the need to rush and put that on the screen. And sometimes that is what the project ends up looking like. And sometimes it works and it's everything you want it to be. Other times it changes a lot over time. All right? But really the first thing you should do, what I try to do at least, is to literally write like I'm writing on the board here on a piece of paper what it is I want to do. Because if I look at it and I decide, I really don't like it, I just ball up the piece of paper and pull out another one. But what happens here, when you grab that interface and you start keying it in, then what you do is instead of letting your requirements drive the program, which is what you're supposed to do, you start to let your interface drive the program. And you try to make the program react to the interface. That's never what you're supposed to do. All right? And let's face it, come next semester when you're working on a project, whether it's the same app you do in Android and iOS or they're two different apps, I have no control over how you do this. All right, so if you sit there and you think, I know exactly what I want this to look like, and you just start coding away, then you're going to do it. The real big problem with this is, with what I just told you, is that's the way it should be done. I still remember when I went to work at AT&T and we had our first project, and I said, when's this due? And the boss looked at me, no smile on his face or anything, and he said, last week. And he was smart enough to know they weren't going to get it last week. But the idea is, we don't really have a lot of time to go back and do things like this. But it's been proven when you do, your project or product will be better. It will be less error prone when you do that. All right, end of sermon. So, you see, the author says, this is what I came up with when I started to break it up into little chunks. Put a button on the screen and label it hit me. When the player presses the hit me button, show the alert to show how they did. Then you can see here on the next page, here on page 16. I'm not going to read all those out to you. He does say that near the bottom, he said, let's put it in landscape because it's a game. It'll probably look better in landscape because it'll have this long slider on it. So it'll probably look better that way. And then finally, if you notice, the last thing that he says in here is make it look pretty. So again, he doesn't worry about that till the end. That's the other thing that I've seen people do. I watched people do this for years, no matter how much I tell them not to. But I see somebody who's not, probably is not going to get a career as a programmer. All right? But boy, they can make beautiful interfaces. And they spend day after day tweaking the interface and not writing any code. I'm not sure exactly, and I'm being serious here, what that buys you in the end. I've said this before, give me a butt ugly interface that works over a beautiful interface that doesn't do anything. All right. So he says he might have missed a few things, but at least he knows. The other thing that does too is it gives you a little bit of a list where you can start checking things off if you want to as you go on. And then you can add to that list if you want to later. All right. So what he has you do next is this one button app. So this is what the app looks like. Literally, right in the middle of the screen, he puts a button here that says, hit me. And when you click the button that says, hit me, it comes up and it says, hello world, this is my first app, and then I don't even know what that says. But the idea is, why did he call it hit me? I'm asking, why did he call it hit me? Well, it's even more fundamental than that, because he's going to have a button in his actual program that's called hit me. So he said, let's just start doing it right away. That way, if he does want to, he can even use this and keep adding to this program. Right? I will tell you, too, because this is, what I'm telling you is, I'm more guilty of it than you are. And that is, the program that I showed you this morning, that guessing game app, last week it worked. All right? It worked. It kept track of the number of games. It didn't blow up. So rather than taking that copy that I had that worked and making a copy of it, that's the copy I was playing with, and I broke. Once you get something to work or where it's in reasonably good shape, one of the best things you can do is make a copy of it, put it someplace where you're not going to tweak that copy. That way, not if, but when you screw it up later like I do, you've got something you can go back to. All right. So, as he says, not real much, just a one-button app, so you've seen all that. Then he goes through several pages of explaining this. And notice he says in the tutorial he'll be working with Xcode 7 or better. Says newer versions might also work, but anything older is a no-go. I've already proven that to you. All right? You've seen where some of the stuff has worked for me. When you try keying in the same code, it doesn't work for you. All right? And it also goes back to something more fundamental. And I'm not going to show it to you on here because I'd have to go and get into the internet. I'm not. But what I did on the machine here, on the non-Mac, during the break, was I went into Google and I typed in Xcode 7 cheat sheet. Anybody want to take a wild guess as to how many hits I got? None. None. Because Xcode 7 is fairly new. And in much the same way, if I come out here and type in Swift 2.0 cheat sheet, now that it looks like it's finding something. All right? So there is one here. Well, there's a surprise. It's under Ray Wenderlich. The first two hits. Swift cheat sheet and quick reference on under Ray Wenderlich. So I could give you 10 of those too. But again, I used to be the kind of person, this is how I was taught. And a lot of it is from the first degree I got, which was a journalism degree. Memorize the hell out of everything. You're never going to be a success as a programmer if you memorize the hell out of everything, but you can't do it. There are a lot of things I know really well. I wish I could do them better. All right. So the author says, come into Xcode. You've done this before. Create a new project, single view app. He talks a little bit about the different templates. Call this BullsEye. All right. Why don't you do this? Why don't you start up a new app right now inside of Swift or inside of Xcode, make it a Swift app, all right, and call it BullsEye. One word with a big B and a big E and a little ULS and a little YE. All right? So you can see all the stuff's up on the screen here. And while you're doing that, you can say a lot of stuff about your instructor, but you can't say, he never gives us handouts. I can say that, but it would be true.
There's too many.
This one, I don't know what you're going to do. I guess you're going to have to do it like that anyways. So. Did it work out? You did?
Yeah, I think I know what I did. I clicked in the wrong view controller to begin with.
Okay.
So it does help when you click on the main storyboard and not the one other one that's in there.
So I can do the same thing here. Start up Xcode. What version is on all the machines, John? 7.0?
I believe so.
See, I've got 7.1.1 now. So I guess that makes me special. All right. Because I just loaded, that was what was out there yesterday. So
Well, I've got 7.1 on
7.1
mine.
or 7.1.1?
7.1.
7.1.1.
Oh.
Single view. Okay. BullsEye. Blackhawk is fine. Swift and iPhone. Where do I want it? Desktop is fine. And here it comes. All right, so I've done all this stuff, and I take for granted you've done the same now. Okay? If you're a little behind, don't worry about it. All right, I'm just, like I said, I just want to go through the main stuff that we, so we can really start working on this project in earnest starting next week. All right? Says when you're done, your screen should look like this, unless you've got my screen, which comes up with an error right in the middle that I can't get rid of because it's one thing that Mac does. They do all this stuff with key logging and chaining and stuff. If you're ever asked to do that, they should have 3 buttons: yes, no, and hell no. And if they ever get that, press the hell no button. Because evidently at some time in my life, I pressed yes. Gave it some kind of a password, which I didn't write down. And have no idea what it is. All right. But every time mine comes up in the morning, I try to get in here earlier than you to set this up because it gives me about 10 messages for different keychains. And I've got it not use my last password, but the password before that to turn all of them off. All right. We don't have to press the run button. You already know what that looks like. Nothing will come up basically when you do that. I also noticed yesterday, I don't know about you, John, how it was set up here, but I had to go and literally tell the system it did not by default download the drivers for all of the different devices. The only thing it gave me was the iPhone 6 Plus, and it put it on the screen, and it was not an iPhone 6 Plus. It was landscape, and it took up virtually the entire screen. I had not seen that before. So. This is kind of interesting here up on page 21 on the bottom of the page. I'm not going to read it, but the author says what happens when you press run. So they're explaining the process as far as what's going on in here. All right. And I won't read it, but if you look at this last paragraph, this is kind of important. When you build your project, it goes through what it calls basically bundling. And what it does is it goes through and it does the compile to make sure your code is all okay. But then if your code is all okay, it does this bundling. And what it does is it adds any images or anything else or sound files or whatever you've got for the program. And it brings them in. But it's like, I don't have to bring this stuff in unless the compile worked to begin with. All right, they tell you to add a button onto the screen. So bring up the main storyboard, get right in the middle of it, put a button in there. You know how to do that. Again, we can all do that. So going back into here, the first thing is if your screen still looks like this, if it doesn't, it's okay. If it doesn't, it's okay. You can bring it back up later. But one of the things that I'm going to do right now is I'm going to uncheck the portrait. Because again, this is a game. And the author says we're not going to allow this in portrait mode. So all I have to do to disallow that is just uncheck this. All right? And if you say, well, that's not showing on my screen, how do I bring that back up? You should be able to double click over here where it says info.plist, and that should bring it up also.
Just
On
click
the
the
very
bullseye,
top,
very
the
top.
bullseye.
Oh, there you go, right there.
Yep.
Click
All
on
right,
it, yep.
click on there. Thank you. So that is supposed to work. I didn't even know that was up there. Maybe that's fairly new. I don't know. Maybe it's always been there and I just never noticed it.
That's probably why.
You would have made a good brother, Travis. All right. So I am going to go to my main storyboard. I'm going to go over here, down in here where I've got, remember, this isn't showing right now, on the bottom right-hand corner where you've got your different controls, you can click the last button near the top here, and that shows or hides your utilities. You want the utilities to be showing, and I'm going to come down here where it says filter and click in that box and type in button. All right. Then I'm going to take my button, and I'm going to drag it basically right into the middle of my screen. And let go. All right, that's what we're told to do. And then we're told to change the verbiage on there so that it does not say that. All right, we want it to say, what is it, hit me, I think. So right now it just says button. I'm going to type in there, hit me, and now it's changed. If I want to, I can widen it out a little bit because it's not all really showing very well right now.
Or if you just double click it.
Yeah. So you always pick the easy way. I always have to pick the hard way to do it. All right. So I now have that in there. Again, if I didn't like exactly where it was, I can play with it, move it around, etc. So they talk about the storyboard, what it is, etc., but you've seen this stuff before. This is one thing that's recommended in here. If you're not going to be using layouts, all right, and we did look at this in one of the earlier ones that we went over, but if you look up on the screen here, I'm on page 24. The author says, in your utilities pane that's on the right, you've got these buttons that are in here, and they say click the first one to open the file inspector, then find where it says use size classes. So I'm going to do the same thing. So I'm going to click the file inspector, and where it says use size classes, you might have to drag up to see that. There it is. I'm going to uncheck it, and then I get a message back that says, do you want to disable these? For lack of better words, what we're saying here is we want to be in charge of where stuff gets put on the screen. All right? So I will say disable size classes. Notice it defaults to iPhone because that's what we were supposed to set our project to. Boom. Now that's done. Well, what did that do? Well, it kind of wreaked havoc with where my button currently is, right? So I can always just click on it and move it back. And it's back again. All right? And I can't tell you exactly 100% what happened when we did that. All I will tell you is that there are some settings that are internal to the machine when you create things and you start putting them on the screen. It's much the same way for those of you who are not really big Mac fans. And it's kind of like, you know, when you are working in Visual Studio and you double click on a button to put it on the screen, it has a size. It also gets put into a certain position. But you can change the size of it, you can change the position of it. All right, we've just done both those. All right. All right, it doesn't matter which one of these we choose. The author says click on the list and pick iPhone 5S. You can do that. If you'd rather pick something else, you can do that as well. All right. So again, if we want to, we can come up here. Mine says iPhone 6S Plus. If I click down, there's iPhone 5. All right, if I want to do that. Again, do you have to do that? It doesn't really matter. All right. They talk about the object library. Find the button, dragging it out into your working area. See, if I had done this in the order that they did it, if I didn't put the button in there first, if I first would have disabled the size classes, then it would have been in the right place to begin with. All right? You say, well, yeah, that's what you should have. No, I actually am glad I did it the way I did it, because you saw exactly what happened when I disabled the size classes. All right? They mention this is how easy it is. They tell you to drag and drop some controls. Well, you know how to do that already. All right. So now they mention, I'm up to page 27. Did you know this? Xcode is designed to autosave. So in other words, if you have not saved and you go to run your program, Xcode is supposed to save it for you automatically. The reason for them doing that is, what if you wrote some code that would cause your program to go into an infinite loop or something like that, or to do a crash? Well, if it did that and it didn't save for you, any changes you might have made would not be saved. All right, so it's both a blessing and a curse that it does the autosave for you. I still oftentimes do a Command S or a file save anyway. All right, they tell you to go into the source code editor and click on the viewcontroller.swift. This is what he tells you to do here. we're going to do it this way. This is different than the way we got ours to work last time. So we're going to do it like this. This is kind of the first way that I've shown this to you. And that is, we're going to type in this line ourselves, and we're going to manually hook it up. All right, which isn't quite as easy as the way we did it before. But just to show you, there's two ways of doing the same thing. All right, so as it says directly above the last ending curly brace in the file, put in this that you see right smack in the middle of the screen in blue. So at IB action, func, show alert. I'll do the same, so I'm going to bring up my viewcontroller.swift right there at IB action. You'll notice that when you do this, the IntelliSense does kick in right here. So it knows at least what it thinks you're attempting to do. All right, so again, we manually put that in. At IB action, func, show alert. Okay, here's a question for you. I'm gonna take this right now and I'm gonna close this. All right, can somebody tell me, looking up on your screen right here, if I click on the storyboard, this will go away, right? I don't want that. I want my screen to split in two. What do I have to do that? Right there. The assistant editor should allow those both to happen. All right. So I should be able to click, as you said, the double circles. There it is. All right. By default, it puts both on the same side. They're both code. I don't want that, so now there it is. Okay. And I don't need this for now, so there I am. Again, I can drag this out if I want to. You may or may not have noticed, but my actual interface on my storyboard did get smaller when I changed my phone type. What you'll notice next semester is there's a lot of different things that you can do, especially when you start using the auto layout feature. We'll get into that at a later time. All right. It says the source code should now look like this. And that's what we just added. All right. It says, before I tell you what all this means, I want to introduce you to the concept of a view controller. This is one of the reasons I decided to go back and do this. This author does it a lot better than I can explain it to you. It says you just edited your main storyboard to build a user interface. It's only a button on a white background, but it's still a user interface. It says you just added source code to viewcontroller.swift. These two files, the storyboard and the viewcontroller.swift file, together form the design and implementation of what's called a view controller. Everything that you do in an iOS project is based off of that concept of model view controller. All right? So it says a lot of work that you do with building iOS apps is working with view controllers. What we'll get into next semester is you can create your own view controllers. When we start creating more complex applications that have several screens on them, each screen will have its own view controller if you want it to do something. All right, so we'll wait on that until we get to that point. All right, the job of a view controller is to manage a single screen from your app. All right, then he talks about, well, what if you had something like a cookbook app? All right, so the idea is you've got a list of different things over here, and you click, and it brings up a brand new screen. All right, so each one of those would have their own view controller. I believe at least that's what he's getting to. It says what these two screens do is very different. One is a list of several items, and one presents a detailed view of every item. All right, and he says there, that's why you need two view controllers, one to deal with a list and one to handle the images. It says one of the design principles of iOS is that each screen in your app should get its own view controller. All right. Currently, BullsEye has only one screen, and that's all it really does need. Okay? So it says, simply put, I'm on near the bottom here of the page. Whoops. It says the main .storyboard file contains the designs of the view controller's user interface, and the view controller.swift contains its functionality. Other words that you'll hear for this. All right? The storyboard is the interface, and the view controller.swift is the implementation. The interface is what it looks like. The implementation is how it does what it does. It says, because you use the single view application, Xcode automatically created one view controller for you. All right? So it says the line of code that you just added lets the interface builder know that there is a show alert action. It says, which presumably will show the pop-up. So we're going to follow these steps. Unfortunately, he does this right on the bottom of the page. It says, click the main storyboard to go into interface builder. All right? Let's follow his steps, just so you see there's another way of doing it. All right, this is the last thing that we'll do today. All right, it says there should be a pane on the left. On that pane on the left, it lists all the items on your storyboard. If you don't see that pane, click this toggle button over here. If you say, I don't know what you're talking about, I'll show you in a second. All right, click the Hit Me button to select it. Says with the Hit Me button selected, hold down on the control key, drag up to the view control. All right, it says you should see a line. So this is basically what we did before, but when we did it ourselves, we let the system create that function for us. All right, now we've manually started to key it in, and we're just going to add this stuff to it. So again, we're on the bottom of page 30 here. Kind of an important point, just so you know, if you look up here and look right in the center of the screen at what's in blue, I'm not going to read it to you. There's different ways of doing this. Some people are real comfortable with controlling, clicking, etc. Some are not. Virtually anything you try to do in here, you'll have several ways that you can do it, just so you know. So we're going to drag that back up. And it says, once you've done all that, bless you, it says, let go, and you'll see a small menu. It'll say Action, Segue, and Send Events. All right, you're interested in the Show Alert. All right, so it's already there. Bless you. So I'm going to do the same thing that they talk about doing right there. There it is. This is the thing that they're talking about. And if this is not showing right here, if this is not showing, you click the button that's down here. All right? All right, and that'll make it appear or disappear. So I want to click on here, hold down on my control key, and drag just like we have done before, and drag up to the view controller, and let go. All right, yes?
Could we drag it up to the top on the left? That looks like the same little arrow there, like straight above.
No, this thing above, you shouldn't really drag it here. This is everything.
No, I'm saying.
You mean here? This
no, above the actual screen where it says "Hit Me," that yellow box.
Up here?
Yeah, you can.
I think you can do that too.
No, it's underneath.
It's there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same thing.
It's the same thing.
Okay.
What this does, just so you know, Luke asked a really good question. So if you look up here, what this is this is your entire project, kind of in outline form. If you don't want to do what I did, which is hold down on the control key, hold down on the touchpad, and drag to here, you can also do the same thing, but drag to there, that little yellow thing you see, because it's the same thing. All right, either way that you do it, it's going to give you the same result. And we're told we want to choose Show Alert. All right. It says from now on, whenever that button is tapped in Show Alert, whenever the button is tapped, the Show Alert action will be performed. That's how you make buttons and controls do things. You define an action in the Swift file, and you make the connection in Interface Builder. It says you can see the connection was made by going to the Connections Inspector, and it says click the small arrow-shaped thing at the top to go to the Connection Inspector. So in other words, I'm going to go to the connection inspector, which is and I know there's a fast way to do this.
Click that third button way over on the right.
There you go. That would probably help. So click here. All right, it says you see the connection inspector there. Now it says click the small arrow on the top. Yeah, we just did that. In the send events, come on. It says the touch up inside is now connected to the show alert. It says you can also see the connection in the Swift file. Well, I don't see my touch up connected. See that? Another way, supposedly, you can do this, just so you know, is I can click on the touch up inside, shift, and drag that way. See that?
Would you do it again?
Yes. I don't know of anybody who does it that way, but supposedly that's another way that you can do it. That is, you can click on here on the touch up inside, hold down on control, hold down on the number pad, and go the other way. All right? I don't see why you should ever do that. But mine didn't appear to take very well, so I'm going to try mine again. So again, I'm going to hold down on control and on the number pad, click, drag up to my view controller here, let go, and choose show alert. And now when you look, when I did it the second time, if you look over here, touch up inside, view controller, show alert. Yours should say that. And I can't tell you why, but sometimes when I work with this stuff, I'll have to do the same thing 1 time, 2 times, 3 times before it works. So what? All right. Now, if you want to, and we're done, but I'll leave this up here because that's the code that you can put inside of Show Alert. So you should be able to put that code in there exactly as it's shown, save it, run your project, click the button, and it should come up and look the way that they showed it in the book. Does that make sense? So I'll leave that up there for a minute. And you notice this is a UI alert controller. And John, I started up my emulator before I started this lecture, so yes, it's up and looking real nice. I just dragged up the lock. It says it's not responding. I click OK. Now that's cool. So this should work like a charm. Should. Does it make sense to everyone when you look at the code here, what's happening? What you're doing up here is you're setting up an alert box. The title on it should be Hello World. All right? The message on it should be This is my first app. The style is make it a regular alert. All right? So you're setting that equal to alert. The action says, all right, what we want to do is we're going to run an alert action. It should say awesome with a default style and no handler. Then what we're saying is to that action, all right, we want to add our alert. He does a much better job of explaining it than I just did down on the bottom of the page. All right, this isn't bad. We got through page 32. We'll pick it up there next time.